Our next speaker is Dr. Dale Moore. She received her DVM from the University of California, Davis, and her MPVM from the University of California, Davis, and her PhD from Penn State University. She's currently the Director of Veterinary Medicine Extension at Washington State University. Can you pull that presentation out? Her career has been focused in two major areas: preventive medicine for livestock populations. That means identifying and understanding and educating about preventive medicine practices that will improve the health, well-being, performance, quality, and profitability of production livestock. And secondly, testing new methods to identify audience learning needs and evaluate educational programs. Her preventive medicine research has resulted in practical approaches to dairy cow and calf herd and improvement. Dr. Moore's research in extension and professional education has led to a new method of understanding how we evaluate individual changes in program participants and a better understanding of our agricultural animal health audiences.
Thank you. So Jason asked me just to give some background information on lameness so you have at least some context in part of the project in which you're working. So my goals are to give you this background on lameness in the dairy industry, the context for the NAHMS lameness section, and then the scoring system that's planned, and then that will lead us into the videos on lameness locomotion scoring that Jason and others have developed. So first you might want to know why we're getting engaged in lameness, and we'll look at the 6 consequences. I think the premier one for me is that lameness is an indication of pain, and that's an indication of poor welfare. But there's a lot of other consequences to lameness, including if those cows are not moving around very well, they're not going up to the bunk, they're not eating, they have a lower dry matter intake, and it can lead to weight loss. Along with that goes a decrease in milk yield, which is a direct impact on the profitability of the farm. Impacts on reproduction because lame cows don't stand to be mounted. And costs associated with treatment. So CHA, just a couple of years ago, did some work on estimating the costs associated with lameness treatment, estimated about $125 to $215 per case of lameness on a dairy farm. And that's kind of dependent upon what the initial cause was. And then probably another important factor is premature culling. So these according to USDA, previous USDA records as well as DHIA, Dairy Herd Improvement Association records, lameness might be considered number 3 or number 4 reason for premature culling. If we look at some of the losses after lameness onset, and I just pulled a couple of papers out, lame cows, according to Rodrigo Bicalo from Cornell, lame cows had a 15% decreased risk for pregnancy.
94 was 21. Oh, yeah. I left it 9 o'clock.
So I'm hearing some background noise.
We all were late.
Please mute your phones, please.
So all I would do is listen to it. Really?
And I didn't know if there was a question for me or not. If there is a question, just pipe in. So we can see some evidence for decreased risk for pregnancy, and we can see some information from Jan Shearer about increasing culling. And then a little piece of information from Canada. If you look at the decrease in production, the top value is 0, and then -2 liters per day. You can see that weeks after first onset of illness, we have a tremendous decrease in milk production. One of the things that I find interesting is this quote from Dr. Bicalo at the World Pediatrics Congress a number of years ago. He said, "Lameness remains a poor relative to bovine mastitis and reproduction in terms of peer-reviewed publications." So I think that what the work that you do in this particular project is really going to help contribute to the literature and some background information on lameness in U.S. dairy cattle. So I think it's really important that lameness be included in this NAHMS project. Another reason is that that NAHMS should be involved is that lameness is terribly underestimated by farmers and herd managers, and there's more than these two studies, one by Wells, one by Espejo. There's a couple more that shows that lameness is underestimated by farmers and herd managers compared to an independent observer by about 20% or even by 3 times. So if a farmer estimated lameness to be 5%, it was maybe actually 15% according to Espejo. And I like this little cartoon because it kind of indicates when we're looking at lameness, it says the garage. At the garage, there's a guy there talking to a guy giving an estimate. He says, it may be an underestimate, but we guarantee it'll be within an order of magnitude. And that's kind of what we see when we try to estimate lameness. The other reason why I think we should be involved is that lameness is a health condition, and that's what we're all about. And in addition to that, almost every single welfare assessment includes lameness observations, and lameness is actually a part of the dairy industry and dairy business, so it's important that USDA take a look at it. I'm going through some of my slides at the same time. So given that, lameness is important, but lameness, it's complicated. There's a whole bunch of causes out there of lameness, so it's really been a tough thing to investigate. The causes are not usually identified on the farm because it may be a layperson, but it may be a professional foot trimmer, but rarely does the veterinarian get involved, except maybe on smaller farms, to actually identify the cause of lameness. And the other problem is that if you look at it as a herd problem, it's usually multifactorial. And so a whole bunch of things that are going on at the same time are working in synergy to create a herd problem. If we try to just go back to looking at records for lameness on the farm to get an idea of an estimate of prevalence or incidence, they're usually not very specific, and they may just take the treatment records or the foot trimming records, and they'll see something like RAP. So you don't really know what that means. Was it RAP for hairy warts? Was it RAP for foot rot? Was it RAP because they had an ulcer? And so you don't have any real specifics. And the next slide is just to show you kind of a lot of the different factors that might play in a herd lameness problem. So when you're out there estimating prevalence, recognize that there's a whole bunch of reasons why that might be high or low. The first one is just the very top is a picture of some spirochetes, so that is the cause of digital dermatitis. And then I put some DNA up there because there is some genetic component to foot and leg conformation that might contribute to lameness. And then if you look down below that, if we have really slick flooring, we can have something, cows could be slipping and they could be causing upper limb lameness. And then we've got whatever the cows are being fed, whatever condition they're living in, their cow comfort in their stalls, the stocking density or overcrowding, the particle size that they're eating might contribute to rumen acidosis and laminitis perhaps, and then whether they have foot bath treatment or not. So you can see it's kind of a complicated issue, and if people are more interested in this topic, we have quite a bit of materials that we developed over the last 3 years on investigating lameness at our website. I took this particular slide and adapted it from Nigel Cook and Ken Nordland because it shows you kind of the inciting factors for lameness, some of those trigger factors, events that happen at calving, the nutrition of the cow, trauma that might occur, infections such as for foot rot or digital dermatitis, and then the effects of standing too much, maybe not having a place to lie down, the surfaces that she's on, the hygiene within the barn area causes an animal to get lame. And then additional standing time and poor cow comfort gets her to stay lame. And that really leads into those consequences of poor milk, poor reproduction, and increased culling. If somebody can get to that cow and identify those lame cows and provide some sort of hoof health management, according to Cook and Nordland, they can go through recovery and then there needs to be some sort of ongoing process for keeping them from getting lame again. And then again, I just kind of put this standing time and the impact that it has on all the diseases that lead to lameness, such as the hoof impact on concrete, and below that, exposure to moisture, damage to soft tissue in the hoof, getting moist skin damaged, damage to soft tissue in the hoof leading to sole ulcers, and moist skin leading to heel warts and perhaps foot rot, all as a result of standing on hard surfaces and in poor environmental conditions. So those things are causes of lameness. And if we look at the next slide, we can see some risk factors from a very recent study done by Chapinall just last year. And these are factors that they found associated with less lameness. So actually a bigger herd size was associated with less lameness in this farm, very deep bedding, access to pasture, sand bedding, frequency of manure removal, frequency of footbath use, and then an indicator of cow comfort within the stall, the distance of the neck rail to the curb, and then providing rubber in the alley for them to walk to the parlor on a softer surface. So this just gives you some of the ideas of things that you might be looking for when you're looking at lameness on these herds. So now we come to the hard part, and this is detection. And we have relied upon gait or locomotion scoring probably since, well, for a couple of decades, I'll say. And one of the problems that we've seen with gait and locomotion scoring is that it's still pretty subjective. And Jason got together a whole bunch of us and provided some videos, and he can give you some of the anecdotes from that experience. But suffice it to say, it's a little more complicated to detect lameness and to all agree upon what is kind of maybe that moderate lameness. We can all agree on a cow that's limping, but those more subtle forms, like you might see in when you're looking at racehorse lameness, that's a little tougher to do on a dairy farm. But it's important because recent lameness research has shown that if you can detect lameness early and treat them, you end up having less severe hoof lesions, less need to be retreated, and less likely to still be lame 4 weeks after that initial treatment. So that's good for the cow, and it's good for the pocketbook. So then we come into, well, you might get asked on the farm how much is too much. And if you look at these numbers, they're all over the place. So in a paper from Grandin, Temple Grandin, 5%. Well, 5% of what kind of lameness? The dairy farm program was looking at 10%. The 2010 version used the 5-point scoring system. The brand new version is now using a 3-point scoring system. Nigel Cook said 15%, 15% of what kind of scoring. And I think it just shows you that the level of lameness is all over the board because we aren't really sure as to what the really good target is. So I think what you're going to be providing through this project is at least some benchmarking and some idea based on a very simple scoring system that that we're hoping anybody can repeat. I threw this picture up because if you have an idea about the level of lameness in a farm, then you kind of want to look at prevention. And I just wanted to show that some of the more recent information is looking at causes, and actually skinny cows, because they have a smaller digital cushion or fat pad underneath that end of P3, that might actually be a cause of lameness. And I think in almost all the studies, we look at cow comfort as a really major player in causes of lameness and our ability to improve cow comfort as a reason for prevention. So I'm throwing this up because the commonly used locomotion scoring system has been this 5-point system, where a 1 is a normal cow, a 2 is a cow that stands with a flat back but arches when she starts to walk, and then a 3, 4, and 5 have been considered lame cows, but the tough part has been this 3, and if it's still showing my animation, only about 55% of cows that score a 3 on this particular scoring program have a foot lesion or have some sort of lesion that can, that we say, well, that's the reason for her lameness. So we're still kind of in this limbo land with what is a 3. So what we've done is try to pull out what are the components of locomotion scoring in order to find those moderately lame cows. So one of them is looking at an arched back. That's that big white cow there. And the other thing is looking at a short stride. So the black cow up at the top on the right has her back foot is coming off where her front foot is taking off from. So that's not a short stride. A short stride is a little bit more towards the bottom, where you see that her back foot is far behind where her front foot is leaving off. So we tend to look for those particular things as components of locomotion scoring systems. So now your job is to go about finding lame cows within the pens designated for you to find them. And if you remember from your epidemiology courses, which you all do, I think, you're doing a prevalence estimate on the pens or pen in which you're doing your gait scoring. And if you remember, prevalence is a function of incidence and duration. So really, you're just taking a snapshot look at lameness in this particular farm. And incidence, if it's a function of incidence duration, incidence is how quickly those cases occur, and duration is how long that they last. So any information I think that you can provide to the farmer about prevalence, if you're able to do that, would be helpful in having some of those cows identified and treated. So here's a look at the protocol that Jason's provided me. So you're looking at a farm. If they have less than 150 cows, you're going to score everybody. If we're looking at larger farms, we've decided that we would score the high production pen or something similar. So that means you have to have some records from the farmer about where they are in days in milk and production to determine what that high production pen is. And in our experience of doing a prevalence study here in Washington and Oregon, a lot of farms don't have that particular designation of high production pen, so you kind of have to figure it out and describe how you did that. And you'll be using a 3-point scoring system to try to make it more repeatable between scorers. So a 1 is a sound cow. There's no evidence of lameness and no gait abnormality. A 2 is a cow with mild to moderate lameness, and these will be described more in the video that Jason's going to show you in just a bit. And then a 3 is a severe lameness. That's a limping cow, and a cow that is also non-weight bearing. So Jason, I'm going to stop with that and take any questions about background and then let you show the videos.